And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this podcast, we're going to continue to look at calculating gross domestic product. And on the previous podcast, we looked at calculating the gross domestic product using the expenditure approach, and we said that the gross domestic product, which we represent with Y, is equal to all the spending on consumption plus all the spending on investment plus all the spending done by governments plus net export spending done by foreigners who purchase our goods and services, and you add all that up and you get the gross domestic product right here. Now, one thing that's really important to this is we got to keep in mind that when we calculate the gross domestic product, we are calculating it by multiplying the quantity of each good or service that is produced times the price of each good or service. And we talked about this when we talked about the definition of the gross domestic product, which is the market value of all goods and services produced. And when we said market value, we said the market value is set by the price. So we took the price of the good multiplied by the amount of the good that was produced, and that gave us the value, the market value of that good that was produced. And then we had to do that for every good or service and then add them up. So this intimidating looking formula right here, it's really a lot less intimidating than it looks. It just means this just means summations. That just means we're going to add stuff together to calculate the gross domestic product. And what we're going to add together is the market value, which is P times Q, for all the goods we produce in society from good 1 all the way to good n being the total number of goods produced in society. So to review how we did this before, we said if we would take the price of apples times the quantity of apples, and that would give us the market value of apples that were produced in society. And then we would add to that the price of bananas times the quantity of bananas plus the price of cars times the quantity of cars. And we would keep doing that for all the goods and services in society until we had done it for every good, added them all together, and that gave us the gross domestic product. And this formula just says all of this. This formula just says that for every good, apples, we'll take the price of apples times the quantity of apples, and then we'll add to that plus the price of bananas times the quantity of bananas plus price of cars times the quantity of cars. And this says that we will sum those up or add them up for all goods in society. Now, what that means, the reason why that is important is because once we add up all the goods and services produced in society and we get the gross domestic product, we have to recognize that there is a flaw in this calculation. You see, because the gross domestic product will go up if, that's supposed to be an F, I'm sorry, will go up if you get an increase in output. So let me say that again. The GDP will increase if you get an increase in output, if you get an increase in quantity. So if we produce more apples, if we produce more bananas, if we produce more cars, if we produce a greater quantity of stuff, then the gross domestic product will go up. And that's obvious. If we produce more stuff, then the GDP should go up because, well, we produced more stuff. So that's really obvious. The problem happens when let's say that the output doesn't go up. Let's say Q doesn't go up. We produce the same number of apples, bananas, cars, etc. that we produced the previous year. Output doesn't change, but our measuring stick changes. The price of apples goes up. The price of bananas goes up. The price of cars goes up. The price of stuff goes up. That will also increase the gross domestic product, and that increase in prices, which increases the gross domestic product, is what we call illusionary. It's an illusion. It makes it look like we produced more stuff, but we really didn't. It's just the prices of everything are higher than they were before. So there are two types of increase in the gross domestic product. There are real increases in the gross domestic product, and there are illusionary increases in the gross domestic product, and we need to separate those. We got to separate those out so that when we are studying gross domestic product, we need to figure out whether or not the increase in the gross domestic product was real or was it illusionary, so that we can really accurately measure whether or not we as a society are increasing production or not increasing production. So we have to have some way to remove prices from all these calculations. We have to remove changes in the price so that we can calculate what is called the real gross domestic product. And that's what economists ultimately care about. So in the news, they will report this gross domestic product right here that we have been talking about, which is price times quantity. That is what's called the nominal gross domestic product, and that's why I have that up here. That's the nominal gross domestic product. But as economists, we care about the real gross domestic product, the real gross domestic product, and that's this part. That's the Q. Okay? So any change in prices, we have to somehow get rid of that. We got to calculate that out. We got to somehow remove that so that we are only picking up the actual increase in the gross domestic product that's right here. That's real. That's the part that we want to focus on. So on the next podcast, we'll take a look on future podcasts how to do this. So thanks for joining me. This has been Mr. Hagan, and I'll see you on the next podcast.